Welcome to the Understanding Podcast, your one-stop shop for understanding, well, anything, all from a biblical perspective. So here's your host, Emma Daughter.
Gosh, this is so crazy right now. I'm quite literally in a library. Actually, the day I decided I was going to start this podcast, I was going to pull the trigger, full send, make a plan, and go for it. I went to the library and I got a library card, which it's pretty crazy because I've lived in Dallas for about 5 years. I think actually the guy just walked behind me. This podcast studio I've made here at the library does have glass walls, so that's awesome. I got to get used to that one. But anyway, I've lived in Dallas for 5 years, discovered that you can get a library card for free, and they've got these study rooms that you're allowed to speak in. You can talk. So they said I could do the podcast here. It's not the most ideal scenario, but I'm doing it. And it was about time. I'm out of excuses. So here we go. Welcome to the family. This is the trailer episode of the Understanding Podcast, and you're kind of probably wondering what kind of podcast name this is. Like, what are we understanding? Are we understanding how to make a podcast? Well, no, that's kind of the bit. Together, we're understanding, well, anything. I used to do a bunch of ministry work under the title Understanding My Bible, and that was great. The website still exists. It's out there. You can check it out. It's been out there for a few years, but now I very much so want to help people understand the Bible still. However, I also want to help people understand how the Bible informs our worldview and the way we think about history, pop culture, and life in general. And that is exactly what we'll be doing in this podcast, seeking to understand whatever topic from a biblical perspective. Sometimes we'll be applying the Bible, while other times we'll be talking about ideas that surround the Bible. Said differently, we're willing to talk about anything and everything on this podcast. Just know you're getting a Christian worldview. In season 1, you can expect us to cover a wide array of topics, things like Taylor Swift and the history of Israel. But this season in particular, we'll spend most of our time studying church history. Then again, nothing is off limits. Sometimes I'll bring in guests, and other times it'll just be me. Nonetheless, you can also expect all the lessons to be presented in an easy-to-understand format. We're putting the cookies on the lower shelf so you don't have to go tear through multiple textbooks to find the answer. We do the work so you don't have to. That said, when you hear this sound, that means a definition is coming your way. We're defining a helpful term. And when you hear this one, that's your chance to lean in. Don't miss it. We're talking about the main point. And then there's this one. When you hear that, it'll tell you I'm putting a map or some sort of image on the screen. If you're hearing it and you're listening on a podcast platform like Apple or Spotify, then you should know that people who are following along on YouTube can see it. But that's okay, you aren't missing much. Lastly, when you hear this sound, it's the bottom line. You'll likely hear that one when we're talking about a cultural issue, something going on in the world, and we want to provide a lens through which you can see or frame the issue. We're putting the cookies on the lower shelf, so to speak, so you don't have to go tear through multiple textbooks to find the answer. We do the work so you don't have to, because that's what families do. They help each other. So since this is your first time listening to the Understanding Podcast, welcome to the family.
Thanks for listening. Please make sure to leave a podcast review. And when you do, let us know what topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes.